Jacob Man, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I hate to bug Steve as often as I've been bugging him, but every time we talk, something dramatic has changed at Utah over the last couple of weeks. So it is our Utah insider, Steve Bartle. What's going on, Steve?
What's up, Ben? How you doing, man?
Doing terrific. It did seem like Jason Beck was a done deal the second Kyle Whittingham got hired. Was that the impression you got, that this was always going to be the case?
Yeah, I said last Friday on the podcast that after Kyle was made official to Michigan, that his top choices were Jason Beck and Jay Hill to fill those coordinator positions, and it sounded like that those guys were the top priorities for a reason. Those are the guys that Kyle knows best, and in these types of situations, it's important for new head coaches to bring guys that they trust, that they believe in, and so Utah did a lot the last couple of days to try and keep Beck here in Salt Lake City. Financially, Utah made a significant push to keep him here, to try and keep him here. It was, according to sourcing, it was a really significant offer to him financially to try and keep him in place. And so, I think that did a lot for all this, but ultimately Beck, he has aspirations to become a head coach pretty soon. And when you're a coordinator at a program like Michigan, you've got a lot of eyeballs on you, and that potentially leads to a lot of doors opening down the road, especially if you have success. And when you look at, the opportunities that others have had coaching as coordinators at other programs similar to Michigan, you look at Dan Lanning and what he has been able to do at Oregon after his time as a defensive coordinator at Georgia. That's the kind of opportunity that Beck could potentially be looking at, in short time here if he has success, and the opportunity to coach Bryce Underwood, that's pretty significant as well. So, this was a big part of the puzzle for Whittingham going to Michigan, and we'll see what the ripple effects are. But this was the guy that Kyle Whittingham wanted to bring, above all else, was Beck and that offense to the Wolverine program.
Offensive side of the ball pretty decimated, at least in the coaching staff. Jim Harding gone as well. Freddie Whittingham gone. Coy Detmer gone. I'm sure I'm missing names. Does this feel like a emergency, or do you think they've been preparing for this now for the last week since Witt was announced?
Yeah, this has been sort of the anticipation since Witt was announced that he was, since Whittingham's interest became apparent that he wanted the Michigan job. I think everybody has been preparing for this. Morgan Scalley, it seemed like he had a pretty good grasp on the defensive side of the ball with his staff, and Luther Ellis and Colton Swan and Tariq Shaw. But, Whittingham, needed guys that buy into that know his culture, that, coach his culture and what he expects. And this was a big thing for Whittingham and for Beck as well to get these additional staffers on offense. Jim Harding obviously being the biggest name there, and I think his arrival at Michigan will be celebrated because he's a big time addition to that staff. Michigan has enjoyed a lot of success in the trenches as a program traditionally, but the last couple of seasons it's tailed off a little bit, and so for them to get Harding, that was a big coup for them. And then I think the most surprising departure was Lewis Powell. Again, according to sources, Powell had indicated that he was going to stay at Utah as of Tuesday, and so the feeling was going into the Las Vegas Bowl that the entire defensive staff was going to stay in place, with Scalley, but obviously reported yesterday that Lewis Powell is going to follow Whittingham to Michigan and become the defensive end coach there in Ann Arbor. So, I think this is that was probably the biggest surprise of it all, was just kind of given what we had been hearing, and Tuesday and Wednesday that he had was leaning towards staying, but obviously he had a change of heart. And so, outside of that, I think everything that we've seen in terms of staff following Whittingham has been, anticipated. And I think for Morgan Scalley, he shared in his post-game press conference that there is a plan. And I think for Utah fans, I think it's important to buy into that, but also understand that doesn't necessarily mean that answers are going to be coming immediately. This is a process for him, and I think for Scalley, there is certainly a plan in place, and he'll have an idea of guys that he'll be interested in that fit his vision. But I think it'll be interesting to kind of learn the names over the next couple of weeks of who we could be seeing fill those vacant spots now that the entire offensive staff and Lou Powell have followed Whittingham to Ann Arbor.
With the transfer portal opening today, do you think there's some urgency to try and get this offensive coordinator hired quickly?
Yes and no. So, as long as Morgan Scalley has an idea of names that he's, honing in on, you can get through the first couple of days in the portal. But ultimately, I do think he's going to need to have somebody sooner than later, right? You don't want to have – you want to have somebody in place to sell the vision a little bit more detailed, right? But I think Morgan has a vision of what he wants the offense to look like. He's looking for a coordinator that fits that vision. And early on, as you get into the portal and all of that, as long as you have that can get you by. But I do think, Scalley is going to want to have people in place much sooner than later. But it's not – you would much rather take your time to get the right guy in place that fits your vision rather than a hurried hire just to have him in place, for the portal. And I think that's going to be kind of the mindset that Scalley takes. But again, Scalley knows what he wants on offense. And the vision there is, an improved passing game, one that, isn't just about production, right? Where you see the Texas Tech offense yesterday, or what was it, 2 days ago, yesterday, I think, against Oregon.
No, I didn't see the offense, actually, Steve. I looked. I tried to find it. I couldn't see it.
Yeah. And an offense like that, it's easy to put up numbers. It's spread out option, but it's a lot of simple things. It's screens. It's vertical routes. I think what Scalley is looking for is, a quarterback and an offense that creates and demands, a passer that can make NFL type of throws. And you need that, like what we saw last night with Ole Miss and Georgia. Trinidad Chambliss, what he was able to do as a quarterback really, accounted for a lot. Georgia is still significantly more talented than Ole Miss, across the board. But a quarterback like Chambliss, who is able to make, NFL-level throws, and that's not just talking velocity and ability to throw the deep ball. That's, layered throws and fitting it into tight windows and fitting it over certain defenders. Making those types of throws, I think that's where Scalley wants this offense to trend towards. And so that's going to be the vision. And he's going to be looking for, a coordinator that fits that vision. And that's going to be sort of the vision that he sells in the transfer portal.
Well, what does that say about Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin? Because that's not what we saw from them this year.
Yeah, and I think, there's layers to this, right? Because of Devin Dampier's experience, there's value there beyond just an ability, beyond a throwing ability. And I think Devin Dampier showed yesterday that there's still talent there. There's enough there as a passer. He may not have the ability to push the ball 40, 50 yards down the field with tremendous velocity, but he can still make a lot of great throws. Bird Ficklin, I think there's a belief in him that he can become that type of passer. He's got an arm where it's amazing watching the ball, come off his hands. There's velocity there. There's juice in that arm that I think is a best that was the best in that quarterback room this season. So there's a belief in Bird that he can become that type of passer. Obviously, there's going to be development needed, but with Dampier, obviously it's a little bit more nuanced, where you know that maybe he's not the absolute best passer that fits that vision, but given his experience and ability to produce in other ways, the fact that he has another year remaining, I think there's a lot of interest in bringing him back to kind of lead into continuity and having as much continuity as you can next season. I think so there is that. And so again, there's layers to this and different things to factor into the conversation. I think you can get by with Dampier. I shouldn't say get by, but I think you would enjoy having Dampier in place for another year, where then you can make that your point moving forward beyond Dampier.
We have talked about A-Rod, that being a name that's been floated at Utah, and his relationship with Morgan Scalley certainly is obvious. Jonathan Smith is a name that seems to have emerged in recent days. Is that a name you had heard previously? And what do you think of that name?
Yeah, I think, with Jonathan Smith, that name has been floated about the last couple of days. It's been, reported by some that he's been in Salt Lake City, and I haven't been able to confirm that. But, I think Jonathan Smith, if he ends up being the guy that, he makes a lot of sense in terms of how he would fit Morgan Scalley's vision. I think a lot of people think of the Oregon State offense, but I think you need to go back to his time as coordinator at Washington from 2014 to 2017, where you get a much better idea of what his offense would actually look like. And I think those Husky offenses, specifically in 2016 and 2017, were really dynamic. They were multiple. They had spread. They had pro-style formations. And so I think that all kind of fits what Scalley is looking for. But yeah, we'll see. I think, the next couple of days we'll learn a lot more about Jonathan Smith. But as of right now, I think, we'll see. I think things could be trending, an interesting way. But we'll learn a lot more about Smith over the next couple of days.
John Henry Daly's in the transfer portal. Smith Snowden reportedly jumping in the transfer portal. Teo Johnson just being reported that he's in the transfer portal right now. How many names in total, or what percentage of the roster do you think Utah is going to end up in the transfer portal? And can you give me some context? Because I think you might throw out a number that shocks people when really it's probably more similar to what most rosters do.
Yeah, I think there's you're probably going to see 30 to 40 players enter the portal from Utah this season. I think that's in the ballpark of what we'll see. So you're going to see some significant names when you have, turnover like this on staff. I think there's it's going to lead to a lot of players, maybe not less so the starters and all of that on the offense side of the ball, but probably a lot of depth and guys looking for opportunities. So I would anticipate there being a number of players that enter the portal from Utah, just again, kind of given the situation and the turnover here. But I think there's going to be a handful of guys that we see Utah hang on to that will be pretty significant as well. That will be key to Morgan Scalley and keeping all that in place. But yeah, I would anticipate there being a pretty significant number of Utah guys entering the portal.
I think I don't want to say lazy, but perceived expectation would be that a lot of those guys are just going to Michigan. How many Utah targets do you actually think there are for Witt to take to Michigan with him?
Yeah, I would probably say there's maybe 6, 7, 8, maybe I don't even want to say 10 guys, but I would say there's probably a handful of guys where you're probably looking at 6 or 7 that would actually go to Michigan and have a role, make an impact there. I think that's going to be kind of the number that we see, at least Michigan being in the mix for. Obviously, with Henry Daly, it's already been reported that there's interest there. With Smith Snowden, I would anticipate there being a lot of interest there. Teo Johnson as well. So we'll see. But, yeah, I would anticipate there being 6, 7, 8 guys and I don't mean to say it. I'm not trying to do the whole 6, 7. I swear I'm not trying to just
apologize to everyone who's driving around with a 12-year-old in their car.
I think that. I'm so sorry. But those are just the numbers. 6 to 8. I'll say 6 to 8 guys.
7
there
or 8,
we go.
yeah,
Sorry.
something right in there. Steve, I'm sure you're doing it on your
Carl,
phone.
dude, that pisses me off so bad that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Hey, Steve, more, I guess, enjoyable if you're a Utah fan conversation. They looked really good in the bowl game. That was a pretty low-stress bowl game. Outside of the opening 2 drives from Nebraska, Utah was dominant, and it certainly didn't look like the moment was too big for Morgan Scalley.
No, definitely. I think that was a much bigger game than just your typical Las Vegas bowl game. Again, given the fact that it was Morgan Scalley's first game, I think there was a lot of interest in seeing how the team would perform. And, that group went out and they finished the season with a pretty emphatic punctuation mark on it. 44-22, doubling up Nebraska, who, is still a program that, yes, they've had guys that opt out that, announced that they're entering the portal or entering the draft and opted out of the bowl game. But that's still a program that has, a lot of talent, a lot of guys that have been in that program for a couple of years and they're still competitive. But and all that. But I think there's, it was good to watch that offense. And, we saw a couple guys really make, a big impact there and J.J. Buchanan and a handful of other guys. And I think, if you're Utah, I think J.J. Buchanan, with the way that he performed, he becomes a top priority for you as a guy that you want to hang on to. And so, we even learned some things in what we saw, what we saw a couple days ago. And I think there will be a lot of interesting dynamics that come to play over the next couple of weeks as Utah works to retain guys. I think, performances in that bowl game could be interesting in how Utah elects to kind of reshape and retool the roster.
One of the things that seemed like a narrative that came out leading up to the bowl game was there was a different energy around the program with Witt gone and with Morgan Scalley there. And I don't think anyone was trying to dunk on Kyle Whittingham, but they did say it was kind of palpable. You could feel that it was a different culture already starting at Utah. Did you get a sense of that, or did you hear that same thing?
Yep, I definitely got a sense of that. You could see it, pregame warmups. Watching Morgan and how he was interacting with the guys and how he was trying to fire everybody up. As the team took the field, typically we see Kyle Whittingham lead the team through the tunnel, and he's one of the first out. Sometimes but Morgan was zapping everybody as they took the field, and I think there is going to be that energy, and I think that's just sort of the nature. I shouldn't say the nature, but I think just kind of given where Whittingham is at in his career, being the old grizzled vet, he's just at that stage in life. And Morgan, this is an exciting opportunity for him, and so it's just going to be one of those things. One of the differences that we see from Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley is the energy that he coaches with, is sort of the emotion that he shows. He talked about it in the post game that he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and we saw that at times during the game and after the game in the post-game press conference and the post-game, trophy presentation. He got a little choked up talking about the players and the opportunity and the moment there. And I think that's going to be kind of a signature of this Morgan Scalley, tenure is that emotion and is that, focus on the players. That's something that he's harped on every time he's had an opportunity to speak, is that this is all about the players and, that it's bigger than one person. It's bigger than him. This is not a Scalley program. This is a University of Utah program. And I think that's going to be his mindset and what he tries to build moving forward.
Steve, great stuff. I don't think you're getting a break anytime soon. I apologize for that. And the basketball season really kicks off now, so Alex Jensen has his work cut out for him as well. Appreciate you jumping on. Enjoy the family this weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you, Jake. Have a good one, man.
Does he not know who he was just talking to? Does he not recognize my voice from Jake's?
No, he as I picked up the phone to sign off, he said he was reading something else.
Yeah, I bet he was.
He's incredibly busy. We are very appreciative for Steve to join us because his last 2 weeks have been
nuts,
ridiculous.
Yeah. All right.
He said, Ben, when he joined you, he said, "Hey, Ben."
Oh, love Steve, honestly. No, it's a lot going on at Utah, so we will see which direction they go. And, I think Utah fans, again, this is what's really interesting. We've talked about this a lot on the show, is trying to reinvent the wheel a little bit when you get the job and when you replace somebody and you think, Morgan Scalley, I'm sure, looked at Witt and just saw someone he thought did a lot wrong. Obviously did a lot right, but did a lot wrong. And one of the things you hear, which I'm sure Witt said this exact same thing not too long ago, was like, I want to have a quarterback that comes in and makes NFL throws. I want to see a guy who can make those difficult throws, not just raw production, but I want to see specific types of plays, specific types of throws that make it challenging as a defensive guy, the defensive background, to defend, to set up a game plan for. And if we can do that, it's going to do X, Y, and Z for us. And you think that's the goal, that's the goal, that's the goal, and you're going to go and target those guys and target those guys and target those guys. How many of those players are there in college football right now? There's not a lot. It's like 4 or 5. Like Sorsby at Cincinnati is like a notoriously very difficult person to be around. He's the top priority for everybody in the offseason, but he's really difficult to be around. He's hard on coaches. He's going to transfer right away. There's not many of them. And when you do have one, they become the top target. LSU wants you. Texas Tech wants you. Teams that have a lot of money want to throw money at you to come and join their roster. So while I understand the goal of that, it's not the wrong goal to have. Are you going to sacrifice raw production that you get going out and picking the wrong guy because you hope he can make 3 or 4 specific throws and sacrificing the production you get otherwise from less sexy, less NFL-ready quarterbacks that do just move the ball, and ultimately what you need is your defense to get a rest because your offense has been on the field for 7 minutes and results in 3 points, even if it's not the type of fancy throw you hoped you'd get.
They just won 11 games with a quarterback that, frankly, was inconsistent throwing the ball at times. And not to say, that's the goal every year, but Utah has been a traditionally really good football team, especially during Kyle Whittingham's tenure. And how often did they have that NFL quarterback, right? You're not playing NFL football. You're playing college football. And there are multiple ways to win, especially with Morgan Scalley's background as a defensive head coach. Don't worry about the quarterback. Worry about getting an offense that can be functional. And if you happen to fall into a Jason Beck that gives you an offense that can score 40 points a game in conference play, then that's great. But you don't need that to win if you're Morgan Scalley.
And it's nice when you have it. It really is. You have the quarterback that can make the 3 throws a game. You have to. If Utah had that, they would have gone undefeated this year. There were 3 throws they needed Devin Dampier to make against Texas Tech that he could not make. And same thing with BYU. He could not make them. Now, the reason why Utah was in the game against BYU was because Bird Ficklin was able to break off a couple of huge runs, and score on some big touchdowns. And you hope you don't lose sight of that. And again, that's the thing where maybe a guy comes in, says, I'm going to reinvent the wheel a little bit. I'm going to try something different, and then realize, oh, that's why Kyle Whittingham did it this way. Because what I'm giving up trying to get this one specific thing hurts the entire rest of the roster, not just the offense, but also the defense. Those are the types of things I'm going to be tracking. Not guarantee that that's what he's going to do, but we could see those types of mistakes being made. All right, Nick Olczyk is going to join us coming up next. Mammoth get a huge win yesterday, and now Clayton Keller is going to be representing Team USA at the Olympics in Italy. What does that mean for the program? Stick around, Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.